that's probably the reason that it almost fell down on that famous occasion when George Washington visited in the 1780s, and must have been up there, Big George and all the rest of the crew, up there, and the church began to creak and groan and move and shiver and shake, and they thought it was going to fall down and fall apart, and they jumped out the windows and doors. We also don't know the plan of the second structure, the larger brick building, but it was probably pretty simple and straightforward too. We do know a little bit about this one because we have some drawings and details from it. And we know that when it was built, it was essentially a big Protestant box. It happened to have some fairly handsome Baltimore architectural elements in it, being built from a design by a Baltimore architect. But in terms of liturgy, it was pretty straightforward. This was a wall. It was not open. It was nowadays the chancel area. And in front of it was a big pulpit up on the wall. There's the hair here, by the way. A big pulpit up on the wall. And either side of the pulpit, lower down, were two reading desks. Not dissimilar to the 18th century method of a pulpit with a reading desk beside it. And then in front of it, a holy table. Probably this table. This is probably the 1849 holy table of that version of St. George's Church. And then, as you know, we tried to hang on to our very plain Protestant characteristics. We resisted the urge for that awful thing, a cross. Brothers and sisters, I hate to tell you, we eventually gave in and had a cross. So we didn't like the idea, and so in 1877, the rector and 50 folks who wanted a higher, more ecclesiological, more Englishy, more traditional church left us and built the original Trinity Church a couple blocks away. Of course, as is often the case, you win the battle but lose the war, because it wasn't long before we were doing all that same sort of stuff. In 1925, in fact, we went so far as moving that screen with its windows back halfway. 1875. Did I say 1925?
Yes.
I'm sorry. 1875. Do correct me if I get things wrong. We moved it back here, and then in 1925 moved it fully back and got Gothic choir pews and of all things, the vestry allowed the choir to be vested. I mean, we've just been on a higher tack and track for a very long time. And of course now we are thinking about trying to make this a much more usable space. That is what your committee and your architects and your vestry will be working on, and including moving the organ and choir back to the balcony that they were part of for all those many years. In my view, the church building is only a sign of the procession of people. And in a way, you can look on us as some of us are brought in arms and walk down the aisle for various events and eventually get carried out in a box. And we've been doing that for a very, very long time. It's one long procession.
And do you remember Charles's fun term for that?
What's that?
Hatched, matched, and dispatched.
architectural history of the church, which is extremely interesting to some of us, I have this perfectly awful little drawing from the internet of St. Paul's Church, Petersburg. But if you look at it, you can see how very similar it is to our church. And when architectural historian Doug Harnsberger, working with that church, found the record that it had been designed by the Baltimore firm of Nearnsey and Nelson, I then attributed this building to Nearnsey and Nelson. Not the least helped on because in the work done in the 1950s, when they removed the plasterwork underneath the stair to the balcony, Baltimore craftsmen had signed it. So-and-so, 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 Baltimore, 1849. But it turned out to be wrong. My friend Martha Roberts one day said, "John, I guess I should have shown this to you a while ago." Martha, will you describe what you showed us and then gave away?
It was a gift to my great whatever grandfather. He was the senior warden, and it was a gift to him from the architects who did the church in this church.
Yeah.
And John recognized the names and so on, so.
And Robert Terry Long, Jr. of Baltimore, a major architect. Now, my pain at having made a misattribution was somewhat assuaged when friends of mine who were great historians of Baltimore architecture said, "John, they did a lot alike." I can show you structures side by side in Baltimore. You would say we're twins, and one is by one of them and one is by the other. And they work together so much that Calvary Church in Baltimore, one part is by one and the other part by the other. But in any case, we're looking forward to learning more about all of those bits and pieces. In a way, it's interesting to me that our temptation to open up our architecture now in the church reminds me of our hope to open up the church itself. I mean, we do that all the time. We're a history of doing good outfit from the days of the creation of the female seminary and the male charity school, all of those things in the early 1800s to the creation of Hope House and the homeless shelter and all the other things that have gone on in part in this room, to the use of this room for the Greek Orthodox Church and for the Jewish synagogue till they found their own. So I'm really interested. I keep thinking there's a part of me that sends me mixed messages. On the one hand, I love all that rich old-fashioned Anglican stuff. And on the other hand, I love the outreach department. So I hope that what we are doing is continuing to do that. Now, I gave you as a special little class project for your imagining Barbara Willis's find. And I want to take a minute and read it, even though that is a bit of a detail. Bishop, I'll certainly understand that your schedule means you can't sit around while we're discussing Nile Green. In any case, this is what Barbara found in 1906. Now, let me remind you what the church was like in 1906. The only stained glass windows were the windows that honored our wonderful friend Edward McGuire, right there at the far end of the church, the east end. Those were 1880s German windows that had been brought in. Otherwise, the building still had either completely clear or clear with maybe a little bit of color glass in the middle. So it was a vast beautiful church. Interior improvements to St. George's completed. The color scheme in exquisite taste, says the reporter, or whoever wrote it. Exterior will now be painted. It would be difficult for anyone not an artist to describe the improvements that have been completed in St. George's Episcopal Church. The entire vestibule has been tiled with gray and brown tiles, walls tinted with very deep cream, ceiling finished in small rolled iron squares. No, I have no idea what small rolled iron squares may be.
But they were in there until 1979.
Oh, Marion, tell us, for heaven's sakes. I don't know about them. That's before I arrived here. What was it?
And so was that floor.
Well, what was
Everybody
it?
remembers that brown and white headed linoleum looking stuff. It really wasn't hot.
And so that's what you have recommended to the Nave Committee and Nave Council Committee. Is that right? No.
Just recommend the slate floor.
No, I
Trying to make it-
don't. Marion, I was trying to make a joke. Excuse me. Excuse me there. The body of the church has been frescoed throughout, though the wainscoting is Nile green. Now, I looked up Nile green 2 or 3 ways. The dictionary says that Nile green is a light bluish green. And right next to it in the dictionary is Nile blue, which it describes as a light greenish blue. And I went online, and this antique dish is said to be Nile green. It is not light, in my view. Is there anybody who's an expert on Nile green?
The bishop is.
The bishop is.
He
So
knows
the
about-
bishop has been to the Nile and it's really brown.
Well, of course, if we could do it in Rappahannock color, we'd be pretty much too.
You can, it's, to me, it's like a jade color, traditional jadey blue green.
Oh, is it?
In China, they use that color a lot in ceramics and the jade, and I've seen it described before also as a Nile green or a Nile blue.
Oh, well, in any case, there it is. The walls, the yellow green,